Is it different in the city versus in other parts? In the Seattle proper or Bellevue proper versus maybe some of the other neighborhoods?
It is different. I work, primarily in South King County and some North Pierce, and we are seeing multiple offers, not to the level that you guys
Not
are getting.
15?
Sometimes 15 in the, say, under 250,000 price range. But usually a half a dozen or so, not quite as competitive, but it's still really disappointing for buyers when they don't get it. And I'm finding a lot of times it's a Seattle or a Bellevue agent that is now shopping South End because their buyers can't find anything in the North End, and they know how to write really aggressive offers, and they're the ones getting the deal a lot of times. I just had represented a seller, brand new on the market, really nice house, totally redone. Knew we'd get multiple offers, and this offer came in more than 10% high, which in the 200,000 range is, it's substantial, and removed quite a few contingencies before even moving forward. The funny thing is, I think what happens when buyers get into a bidding war, they got buyer's remorse and they ended up backing out. So my second position buyer ended up with the house. So a little bit different in the South End than it is in the city.
Okay, so let's maybe define this. Where's the South End start?
Well, I would say I grew up in Seattle, so I do business in Seattle as well. But in terms of getting more affordable housing, it's outside of the city limit. So maybe Skyway-ish, White Center, Southwest Seattle even, and then all the way south. Renton is a lot more competitive than Federal Way, for instance, which is where my office is. I wrote a couple of offers for a buyer I have in Renton on different properties, and we ended up getting one. But, we've been doing this for 3 weeks now, and he's lost 3 or 4.
Wow.
And it's unusual. I'm pretty good at winning.
I don't know. Can you beat Eric in and out of Costco is the big question here.
Eric's my competition.
You're tall, too, though.
I'm tall, too.
So you can see over the stuff at Costco and maybe over the other offers. When people are going in and they have this competitive nature in a market that is less competitive, it's not maybe Queen Anne or it's not even downtown Bellevue or whatnot. If it's a less competitive market, you just brought up the fact that some people may go in and then they realize maybe they've overstepped their bounds there. Are there strategies that are different in markets that are warm but maybe not piping hot?
I think the strategy for me, this is just when I represent a buyer, is really, really developing rapport and a relationship with that listing agent, which can be hard to do when they're fielding, 30, 40, 50 calls on a brand new hot listing. But the one that we ended up winning this weekend was because I called her before I showed it to see where they were. We texted each other.
Had a couple drinks.
I would have if she had time, but she was too busy.
Sure.
But, it was between my guy and another person, and we got it because of the relationship I developed with her in a very short period of time.
Sure.
But it's all about knowing who you're going to be in business with as an agent because getting the house isn't the end of the transaction. And somebody who's communicative and on their A game and, able to get through things quickly is somebody who's going to give you a smoother transaction in the end. So
how does a listing agent talk to their buyer about having a good relationship with the buyer's agent? Is that something that would come up? Like, hey, I know this person versus I know this guy's offering more money?
Well, you have to make it come up. So because a listing agent, a lister, a seller, isn't necessarily going to think of that. They're going to just look at what's on paper. Oh, this buyer has the strongest offer, but that's not necessarily an offer that will end up closing or going well. The transactional part of it is really important too.
Sure.
So as an agent, I always tell my sellers, and even, with my buyers, relationship, doing business with people that are ethical and work hard and communicate well, it's really, really important. Buying a house is a lot of times one of the most stressful things a person ever does in their life.
Finances and emotion at the same time.
Absolutely. And especially in this market, it gets really frenzied when it gets competitive. So those relationships are important. So I think it's critical. And as, for the public out there, talk to your agent about the other agent on the other side of the transaction and get a feel for how they think it's going to be.
Are there a lot of agents who are coming in with less experience? I mean, are people starting to get back into the game here?
They are. As a matter of fact, I had a call on a listing I have last night, and it was somebody who wrote up an offer, and I let her, it's a short sale. I let her know where it needed to be to even get a look, and she didn't write it, at a sufficient level. So, initially she left me a few messages that were a little bit adversarial and wanted me to really force the issue with my seller and get a response. And I think she realized that's not the way to do it. So we ended up later talking about that. And I think she realized that experience is important, but more than that, the communication is critical. And so she went back and rewrote the offer, and now it's where it needs to be. The seller's going to sign off, and it'll be good.
And the offer is really what's getting presented. It's tough to maybe encompass personality in the offer.
It is, especially as a newer agent. If you have an aggressive personality, it's really easy to just get out there and push things. But it's important, too, to realize you don't have as much experience as seasoned agents do. And I don't think there's anything wrong, and I did this when I was new, with asking, hey, you know what, I'm pretty new at this. Can you help me? How can I write this offer? How can I make it stronger? What do you need from me? This is where I am. So if you try and bluff your way through it, it'll become obvious.
Yeah, well, and I would think in this type of market, and when you're dealing with people who are pretty stressed about getting a home, trying to kind of bluff your way through something versus, as you said, maybe gaining rapport and having a lot of trust in the entire transaction is probably not the way to go.
Right. Yeah.
Sounds scary.
Well, yeah, she was about to get totally blown off until she reached out to me and said, listen, what is it going to take? And then, I had a little bit more respect for her because she really was trying to work hard for a buyer instead of trying to intimidate her way through the process.
Ramona Jones is here with us with the Jones Group at Keller Williams. We were talking about the difference between, the Seattle-based or city-based real estate and some of the South End real estate. When you start talking about the difference in real estate agents in both of those markets, is there a difference? I mean, I know if you probably go over to the East Coast, there's going to be a massive difference in, no, we're going to push to get this done.
Right.
And again, in Seattle, we've discussed the passive aggressiveness of people, and nobody wants to do anything that could possibly offend anybody else. Do you see that come through differently between maybe Seattle agents and other parts of the town?
I do. I think your East Coast, West Coast analogy is a good one because on the East Coast, people are much more aggressive. And I see Seattle and Bellevue agents being a little more on their game because they have to be. Whereas in the South End, especially when you get further south into Pierce County, maybe some rural areas, agents are really laid back. And, if a day passes and there hasn't been any communication, it's no big deal. You're still within time frame, whatever it may be. But you've got buyers and sellers on pins and needles about things. And it comes back to that, having rapport and communicating. Maybe you don't need to be on the phone all the time, but send a quick text. Let, the other side know what's going on. A huge difference.
Yeah. I would imagine you just think about the difference in personalities of I guess, in the city versus out of the city. And I guess that's something that you have to, to think through when you're going through these type of transactions.